Pokémon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl were pretty awful remakes. They had less features and less content than their DS predecessor, Pokémon Platinum, as well as a whole host of hilarious and game-breaking glitches on release. As such, these games were just so disappointing and quickly fell into irrelevance. That is, until we got Pokémon Luminescent Platinum, the fan-made mod that tries to fix these remakes by adding in a ton of features and some crazy new story elements, while also making the game significantly more difficult. So I had to try this game to answer two very important questions. First, is this truly a better Sinnoh remake than the official Nintendo release? And would I still be able to beat this game even with the insane difficulty increase? Well, let's find out. We load in, and at first glance, things don't seem too different. Although, unfortunately, the art style still remains unchanged, so Cyrus still manages to look like a chain-smoking toddler. Regardless, after choosing what is undeniably the best Sinnoh starter, we had our Chimchar and were ready to explore what this game had to offer. And right away, there are a bunch of new features and additions. For example, we're given both the Pokéradar and the bike from the very beginning of the game, which is really convenient. But on a stranger note, we're also approached by a Shaman down by the lake, who then proceeds to start sniffing me? I don't know whether this is meant to be cute or horrifying. The changes don't stop there either, because after returning home, we're also given an Eevee by our mum, which I name Freebie. And in another nice addition, we're also able to change our outfit right away in this mod. So I chose the Ben 10 Hype Beast looking drip before leaving home and finally beginning our adventure. But shortly after arriving in Sandgem Town, there's another surprise waiting for us, because in this game, you're actually able to get all 3 Sinnoh starters from Rowan's lab. So our team was already starting to look pretty good, and you might think that having access to all of these Pokemon immediately might make this game easy, but you couldn't be more wrong. We'll get into that in a little while, but for now, we have our first fight against Dawn, and since she's only packing one singular Turtwig, our Chimchar instantly incinerates it to death with Ember for a quick win, clearing us to move onward through Route 202. Another added feature of this game is the addition of more wild Pokemon. So this area is basically a hall of fame of early game trash bag Pokemon from across the entire series. Anyway, eventually we reach Jubilife City, and there are a whole bunch of useful items and TMs for us to find here. But the most interesting thing we can grab is from this farmer inside the school, because she gives us an egg of a random baby Pokemon, which, after running around for a while, hatches into Tyro, the baby fighter who I name One Punch Man. With that, now it was time to leave Jubilife and set our sights on Oreburgh City and our first gym badge. Along the way, there are a bunch of mandatory trainer battles, including our rival, who already has a noticeably better team than in the base game. Regardless, we're still able to cruise through these early fights relatively unscathed, although we do get a nice power boost once Chimchar reaches level 14, evolving into Monferno, and we get another significant boost soon after inside the Oreburgh Gate, as it's here that we're able to find Riolu. I knew that I had to catch this guy, and while he did not want to stay in the ball, eventually we had added Lululemon the Riolu to our roster. Shortly after that, we finally arrive in Oreburgh City, and this is where Luminescent Platinum finally starts to show how menacing it can be, because this is where the first gym is located, and the gyms in this game are insane. Each gym leader has a full team of 6 powerful Pokemon, and on top of that, gym leaders also have multiple team variations, so you can't just prepare for one specific matchup. All of this combines to make gyms so much harder, and with my extra rules, I'm not allowed to overlevel my team past the gym leader's ace, as well as have to play on set mode, just to make the difficulty that much higher. Basically, I knew that if we wanted to stand any chance against the gym, we needed to catch more Pokemon. So I went on a catching spree, grabbing absolutely anything I could find that looked even remotely useful. And I really love how this game gives you access to so many cool Pokemon right from the beginning. It's nice to have all this variety. With that, after assembling our strongest team of 6, we stepped up to the first gym leader, ready to take on Rourke and his rock types. Rourke opens with Shield on, which really isn't great for me since I led with the grass type Turtwig. So I instantly switch out into Rhyhorn as Rourke just sets up Stealth Rock. This means that on the next turn, a big quad effective Bulldoze quickly picks up our first KO, giving us the early lead. However, that doesn't last long, as next in is Anorith, who, turns out, knows Aqua Jet, which decimates our Rhyhorn in only 2 turns, evening up the score. To counter this, I send in Monferno next, as a priority Muck Punch is all we need to finish off the already weakened Bug. But Rourke then responds by sending in his own Rhyhorn. So my plan was to switch into Turtwig to overpower it with super effective grass moves. However, we take big damage on the switch from Stealth Rock and Bulldoze, and on the next turn, Rourke lands a lucky crit, burying our turtle in the dirt before he even had the chance to attack. This puts us on the back foot. However, it's here that our new Prinplup absolutely takes over, because with one Water Pulse, we can drown out Rhyhorn immediately. And on top of that, the big-nosed freak that follows also succumbs to 2 Water Pulses, as well as Lord Helix, who follows soon after, putting us comfortably in the lead thanks to our Prinplup. While Rourke's final Ace Cranidos does finish off our weakened Penguin, from here, Monferno can clean up the fight with a power-up punch, followed by a priority Muck Punch for the KO, yielding us the win, as well as our very first badge. While we may have gotten the win on our first try, that was way harder than the original games, which makes me very excited, and honestly a little scared, to see what the rest of this game has waiting for us. And I didn't know it at the time, but there was some absolutely insane stuff on the horizon. But for now, we'd obtained our first badge and set our sights on obtaining the next one. This involves gradually making our way through the next few routes until we reach Floroma Town. And it's here that we have our first real run-in with Team Galactic, who have overtaken the Valley Windworks. So, to take it back, we have to fight our way through a string of grunts, during which Turtwig finally gets to evolve, joining its Sinnoh brethren in the middle stage evolution. Although the real highlight of this quest is when Shaman appears and we get defeated Honey. Seriously, I would die for this flowery little hedgehog. After making our way through the Windworks though, we finally confront her. Commander Mars, the first galactic boss and by far our toughest fight yet, because despite us having a 6v4 advantage here, as well as some strong Pokemon, I still got crushed. Her lead Zubat isn't overly threatening, so we can deal with that pretty quickly. But the Bronzor that follows is so annoying. It's really bulky and just confuses my team repeatedly with Confuse Ray. But despite that, with a little switching, we can take it down without too much trouble. And while the Yanma that follows is pretty annoying to deal with, we can handle that too, leaving Mars with only her final Pokemon. And it's here where everything falls apart, because next in is Purugly. This fat cat is a menace. It's fast and it hits hard. On top of that, Purugly shouldn't even evolve until it's a much higher level. But somehow, Mars got an illegal one at level 19. Officer, send this cat to prison for its crimes at once. Despite this being a 1v4, Purugly just goes absolutely crazy here, crushing Prinplup in a single shot. And things don't get any better from there, as our final 3 Pokemon are quickly brutalized into their graves with an onslaught of Aerial Aces. And yeah, we had lost to a single fat cat. However, I wasn't ready to give up, so I built a new team with a much better strategy, marched straight back to Commander Mars, ready for revenge, and we lost even worse this time. I got swept by a Yanma. A Yanma! That was just embarrassing. Luminescent Platinum is clearly much more difficult than the original games, and if I wanted to stand any chance of beating this game, I would need to get serious. So, after tweaking our team to add in Larvitar, as well as teaching our Pokemon some new TMs, we returned back to Mars to face the dreaded Commander for a 3rd attempt. This time, we lead with Prinplup, whose main job is to set up Stealth Rock. Although, thanks to some bad luck with Confusion and Poison, we're only able to land a single Bubble Beam onto Zubat before our Penguin goes down. And while Monferno can quickly pick up the trade with Flame Wheel, this brings out Mars's Bronzor, which is so annoying. Its cheesy combination of Confusion and Hypnosis are just so frustrating to deal with. As a result, Monferno is quickly crushed by Extra Sensory, with Bronzor also crippling our Machop by the time Bronzor finally falls to burn damage. The dreaded Yanma is next, with Stealth Rock immediately sapping away half of its health before Machop is finished off. Once again, our team was falling apart. But this is where things start to turn, because after Rhyhorn tanks a Leech Life, a single super effective Smackdown is all we need to finish Yanma. yet again leaving Mars with only her illegal Purugly. Rhyhorn has a pretty good matchup here, allowing us to land 2 bulldozers for big damage, while also significantly nerfing Purugly's speed. Once Rhyhorn falls, Larvitar makes its debut by landing a Rock Tomb, lowering Mars's speed even more. All of this means that once our final Pokemon, Grotle, hits the field, with one last barrage of Bullet Seeds, we claim the final KO, giving us a very redeeming win over Mars. So, Team Galactic are forced out of the Winworks, but that win doesn't inspire much confidence. I mean, we're still in the early game and got absolutely stomped by Mars. Things were definitely gonna get a lot harder, and we needed to get a lot stronger. After proceeding onward through Route 205, we enter the dense Eterna Forest, where we meet Cheryl. Keegan, are you a strong trainer? Yeah, totally. In this mod, we actually have to battle Cheryl to prove our strength. Thankfully though, her team isn't too hard to deal with, so we clean her up pretty quickly before teaming up to make our way through the forest together. While here, I knew that we had to catch some more Pokemon to strengthen up our team, and I was able to find some pretty useful stuff. However, by far, the best thing I found was a shiny Baneri. Just look at this adorable little bunny. Obviously, I had to catch it, naming our new Baneri Cotton Candy. So, with these Pokemon added into our arsenal, we left the forest behind, before shortly after arriving in Eterna City. The second gym is here, but we can't challenge the leader yet, because another change in Luminescent Platinum requires us to go up and find her on Route 216, the snowy route that's usually locked until the late game, but we get to access it now. It doesn't take too long for us to track down the missing gym leader, but during this trek, we can find a bunch of extra Pokemon to add to the team, including some that I'll definitely need to bring into the next gym. So, after returning to Eterna City, I was able to evolve some of our team members, giving us a nice boost. And with that, we assembled our strongest team possible, ready to assert our dominance over the Grass-type leader, Gardenia. Except that's not what happened. Despite coming into this fight with some pretty good type matchups, Gardenia's Pokemon are just so bulky. Combine this with grassy terrain and held items like Black Sludge for recovery, and we just couldn't deal enough damage to overcome these grass-type behemoths. As a result, our team just got slapped around, and it wasn't even close. Things then got even worse, as despite adding some great new grass-type counters to our team in Breloom and Swellow, ultimately it made no difference to the end result, as Gardenia's Roserade just buried us once again. This was looking so rough. Luminescent Platinum was basically just bullying me at this point. I had had enough. My pride may be in the mud, but I made a vow to never lose again. I was gonna show Luminescent Platinum just how good I truly was. And so, with my best team of 6 in tow, we once again stepped forward to tackle the Grass-type menace. This time, Gardenia opens with her Voltorb, which is horrible since I'm leading with Golbat. This forces me to switch immediately, so I bring in Breloom. Despite Voltorb setting up Reflect, it's still frail enough for 2 Force Palm to quickly take down the electrified ball. Next in is Gardenia's Skiploom, who I know is going to go for a flying move, so I opt to bring in Matang, who has an incredible matchup here. Despite getting paralyzed by Skiploom's bounce, Matang still holds on long enough to finish off the flying plant with a combination of Iron Heads and Bullet Punches. Gardenia's Parasect does pick up a quick trade onto our Steel Soldier, but this is where we take over, as Swellow hits the field. 2 plucks are all we need to finish Parasect, and while the Blossom that follows tries to stall us out, eventually our bird claims yet another victim with Pluck. After Vileplume also succumbs to the demonic wrath of Swellow, Gardenia was left with only her Roserade. This thing may be an absolute menace, but with 5 Pokemon still left on our side, we're able to gradually wear down the super-powered plant, finally giving us a much-needed win over Gardenia. That's our second badge obtained, and Swellow was the absolute MVP in that fight. Thank you, Mr. Bird, for saving me from further embarrassment. Our winning momentum was set to continue too. Next, we stormed the Eterna Galactic building, and while Mars may have slapped our team into the dirt, Jupiter is a very different story. Our team is much better equipped than we used to be, meaning that her first few Pokemon are dealt with pretty easily. Against her ace Skuntank, we just have Breloom put it to sleep with Spore, before an onslaught of punches from Monferno finishes off the poisonous skunk. Having lost, Jupiter flees, leaving behind this completely unsupervised Porygon. So we kinda just decide to literally steal it, quickly stuffing it into our backpack before anybody notices. Before moving on, there's 2 more Pokemon that I want to make sure we pick up. The first is back by the Eterna Forest, inside the old chateau, where we can find Rotom. After catching the televised ghost, we also get the secret key, and this is a change that I love, because it means that we can actually change Rotom's form using the hidden room inside the Galactic building. Then finally, before we leave Eterna, we also run into Cynthia, who hands us a mysterious egg in these trying times. And with those new additions now secured, next we head south of Eterna in search of our next gym badge. This is where Luminescent Platinum shows even more changes. For example, in this version, we have to do the Wayward Cave quest, which sees us team up with Mira to navigate through the cave. It's not overly exciting, but it does lead to us getting the TM for Dazzling Gleam, as well as finding this new static Gabite encounter. Obviously, I had to catch this guy, after which I name it Cynthia. Isn't she just so dreamy? Bask in her overwhelming beauty. Anyway, after making our way through Mount Coronet and Route 208, I was hit by one of the biggest surprise additions to Luminescent Platinum, Aaron, the Elite Four member who just ambushes us and forces us into a fight. Even if you try to decline, he just won't take no for an answer. Not only does this man pull up with a full team of 6, but they're all fully evolved and have strong movesets. So remember when I said, I made a vow to never lose again? Yeah. That was a lie, because this man just cooked my team in one of the most unexpected beatdowns of my entire career. You're an Elite Four member going around attacking 10-year-olds with 2 badges. Do you feel good about that? Coward. You sicken me. Anyway, after losing to this guy again in a fight that I do not want to talk about, I had to teach this loser a lesson by unleashing the cheese. Because on my 3rd attempt, this time, I just had Lucario go Super Saiyan by setting up a bunch of Swords Dancers against his Ariados. From there, our Lucario dishes out some cold, sweet revenge by sweeping his entire collection of bugs straight into the trash. Take that, you spawn camping coward! With that fight behind us, I knew that now we would never lose again. After finally arriving in Heart Home City, I was determined to power up our team, and thankfully, Luminescent Platinum makes this very painless, as we have access to the Everlasting Candy. It's basically unlimited rare candies, which sounds really overpowered. However, this game also gives you the option of automatically enforcing level caps, so you can save a bunch of time grinding levels, which makes the game way more enjoyable. So, using this method, as well as some of our items, we can evolve a ton of our Pokemon, giving us access to some much needed defensive options like Clefable, as well as Umbreon. On top of that, the egg that Cynthia gave us also hatches into a Togepi that I named Scramble, who, after furiously running around in circles, eventually evolves all the way into Togekiss. With that, I assembled our strongest team of 6 and charged right into the Heart Home Gym, ready to show our newfound strength. Fantina specializes in ghost types, and our team was actually holding their own. With its Serene Grace ability, Togekiss can deal out big damage while also making its opponents flinch. Swellow's Scrappy ability lets it hit ghost types with normal attacks, allowing us to bury the deadly Gengar with extreme speed. And against bulky threats like Drifblim, we have moves like Leech Seed on Torterra and Wish on Togekiss to help us stall. Combine this with Lucario's raw damage output, and our team was gradually chipping away at Fantina. While the bulky Drifblim did take an absolute eternity to deal with, our Swellow was eventually able to pop that balloon, and the Ace Mismagius that follows quickly suffers the exact same fate. With that, we'd gotten badge number 3 on our very first attempt, all while only losing one Pokemon in the fight. Our team had reached a real turning point, and I knew for a fact that we would truly never lose again. Now, this next section of the game has us travel all the way from Heart Home to Veilstone City, and during this trip, we come across some new added side quests. For example, by beating up a ton of Galactic grunts inside the Pokemon Mansion, we're given a Manaphy egg, which seems incredibly busted. On top of that, after eventually making our way through Route 209, inside the Lost Tower, we witness a Lampent literally commit murder. What is happening in this game? Anyway, it feels like there's so much new content and I can't go into depth on absolutely everything. However, during this journey to Veilstone, we have a bunch of our Pokemon reach their final evolutions, which gives our team a massive power boost. And after clearing our way through Route 215, we had finally reached Veilstone City. Giraffarig. You're right, Giraffarig. I should subscribe to the Keegan J YouTube channel. Outside of this shady guy in the corner, who's selling some incredibly useful items, our main objective here is the 4th gym. And while Maylene's team has some huge fighting type threats, we have some amazing fighting type counters. As a result, this fight is actually pretty straightforward. By equipping our Crobat with an expert belt, super effective aerial aces can rip through a large chunk of Maylene's roster. And after Crobat also screeches her ace Lucario to nerf its defense, this clears the way for Swellow to finish the fight with one last aerial ace. So now we had our 4th badge. And I started to think that maybe the rest of this game wouldn't be so hard, since now we have fully evolved Pokemon. What a fool I was. Because Luminescent Platinum was still going to get way harder. And it wasn't going to take long for us to find that out the hard way, because after heading south of Veilstone, through routes 213 and 214, eventually we reach Pastoria City. This gives us the chance to add some water types to our roster. First, by catching a Gastrodon on the outskirts of the city, and then, this old lady just decides to give us a Lapras. So, with these 2 wet warriors on the team, we set our sights on the 5th gym. However, this is where the difficulty ramps up, because it turns out this gym has permanent rainy weather, which gives a massive buff to water types, putting us at a huge disadvantage. Despite that, we've got some pretty powerful Pokemon. So, I assembled my strongest anti-water roster before stepping up to face the leader, Crasher Wake. And I got destroyed. Not only does the permanent rain boost all of Wake's water moves, but since half of his team has the ability Swift Swim, they also get a speed boost too. Combine all of this with the fact that his team just has so much type coverage, and the end result was a brutal beatdown that wasn't even close. Once again, we had been crushed. Clearly, I needed a new plan. So, after taking some time to assemble a new roster, we approached Wake for a second time, determined to get the win. Although, first, I have to acknowledge how cute and goofy this tiny little Floatzel looks. Can we keep him? Please? As the rain pours down, Wake leads with his Lumineon as we go into Torterra. Despite being a grass type against a water type, this still doesn't even feel like a good matchup, as Wake has Hurricane, which instantly deals enormous damage to our turtle. We're still able to set up Stealth Rock, but I can't stay in any longer with Torterra, so switch into Rotom, who tanks the incoming Surf reasonably well. And after surviving another one on the following turn, a super effective Discharge fries Wake's fish, putting it on the brink of death. I switch on the following turn to try and keep Rotom healthy, but surprisingly, Wake switches too. This leads to a water-type matchup between his Seeking and our Lapras. For some reason, this thing knows Thunderbolt, which hits Lapras hard and causes paralysis before we respond by landing a Toxic. We can't beat Wake with all-out offense, so instead, we have to go into Big Brain mode. As Seeking tries to Thunderbolt our Lapras again, we can switch into Torterra, who isn't affected. Then, we switch back into Lapras, who can comfortably tank the incoming attack. So, by repeating this process over the next few turns, the toxic damage gradually eats away at Seeking until the fish finally falls. Now we were ahead, but next in is Ludicolo, and this thing is a threat. With amazing move coverage and incredible speed under the rain, this guy is about to dance on the graves of my entire team. To save Lapras from certain death, I decide to switch into Torterra, sacrificing our turtle in the process. However, this allows us to bring in Swellow, who I specifically included just to deal with Ludicolo. Our Focus Sash guarantees that we always survive a hit before Swellow lands a massive super effective Brave Bird, crushing the dreaded Dancing Pineapple in a single shot. And on top of that, Swellow survives the recoil damage on only 12 HP. The weakened Lumineon re-emerges next, but thanks to extreme speed, Swellow quickly finishes it off. This causes Wake to send in Tentacruel next, and I'm expecting it to go for a water move, so switch into Lapras, who absorbs the incoming Scald, recovering its HP in the process. As a result, now Lapras has enough health to survive long enough to land 3 crucial drill runs, which ends up being enough to bury Tentacruel. But despite us being ahead, this is where things start to turn. because when Gorobis hits the field, I try switching into Breloom only to get instantly apprehended by a super effective Psychic. And while our Lapras is able to land a Toxic, it too quickly falls at the hands of Shadow Ball. Our team was starting to fall apart, and we desperately needed a hero. Enter Rotom. Our floating washing machine is just tanky enough to survive a surf, allowing us to fire off a discharge, sending Gorobis to its grave. But we weren't safe yet, as Wake still has his ace, Floatzel. And with the rain boosting its power and speed, it instantly gets the revenge kill on our Rotom. Out of options, I finally send in our Lucario, who just survives a waterfall thanks to its Focus Sash that I brought earlier. This allows us to land a big Thunder Punch, and it just isn't enough. Floatzel hangs on before decimating our Lucario on the next turn with Aqua Jet. Now we were down to a 1v1, with both remaining Pokemon on the brink of death. And while Wake may have the rain on his side and a priority move in Aqua Jet, we have Extreme Speed, a +3 priority move that outpaces Floatzel, delivering the final blow and giving us an insanely close clutch win. That gives us the 5th badge, and this game is stressing me out, possibly taking years off of my life. After leaving the gym, we learn that Team Galactic have set off a bomb inside the Great Marsh. So, after chasing down the grunt and beating him senselessly, we let him walk away, completely uncontested, for some reason. Anyway, at this point in the game, we've had a taste of how hard some of these fights are, as well as a few of the new added side quests and other content. Although, one thing I haven't mentioned is the updated models and resizing in this game. I mean, just look at the bounce physics on those udders. Technology has truly reached its peak. Putting that aside, while I did lose a few fights in this next section of the game, I want to focus on getting to the part of Luminescent Platinum where things start to get crazy. With that in mind, we gradually made our way to Canalave City, catching a few extra Pokemon along the way, while also fully evolving some more of our team, giving us access to some really strong guys. A nice quality of life change in this mod is that all trait evolutions have been removed, meaning that Pokemon like Scizor and Electivire are entirely obtainable on a single copy of the game. On top of that, some Pokemon have also had their typing adjusted. For example, Ampharos gains the Dragon type just like its Mega Evolution, and Flygon is now a Bug Dragon, meaning that it's not just a Temu version of Garchomp anymore. Anyway, the Steel-type gym in Canalave City was pretty straightforward, with our Fire and Fighting types putting in work to give us a pretty clean win for Badge 6. And after eventually dealing with Mars and Saturn at the 2 Sinnoh Lakes, we began the long journey north towards Snow Point City. After dealing with the perils of an ice puzzle that exposed me and my tiny brain a little more than I'd like to admit, we can challenge the 7th gym. And ice is a pretty terrible type, so this was probably going to be fine. Right? Wrong, wrong, wrong. Candace is a nightmare. Just like the Water-type gym, the Ice gym also has permanent weather to boost up her Ice types. On top of that, her Pokemon are just so strong and so cheesy. Candace would just freeze me so often. Combine this with her outrageous speed and power, and I was getting ripped to shreds. We were handed loss after loss, and I was ready to throw my controller into the stratosphere. Eventually though, the game took pity on me, and I was finally able to make some progress. This time, I lead with our newly evolved Tyranitar, who temporarily overrides the weather with sand. Tyranitar's job is mostly to set up Stealth Rock, as this will do big damage to any incoming Ice types. Although, of course, I get frozen again, so our Godzilla quickly goes down without being able to accomplish much else. So, next I send in Scizor, who just manages to survive a hurricane from Delibird before setting up a Swords Dance to boost our attack. After that, on the next turn, a boosted priority Bullet Punch slaps that bird out of the sky, although the Abomasnow that follows just manages to survive a hit before sending Scizor to the scrapyard. Despite that, Lucario's Flash Cannon quickly evens up the fight to a 4v4, and this is where we start to take the lead. Because I know from our previous attempts that the incoming Glaceon is about to Earth Power my Lucario into its grave. So instead, I switch into Rotom, who dodges the incoming Earth Power with its Levitate ability before an Overheat on the next turn absolutely cooks Candace's Glaceon. Delicious. The last 3 on Candace's team are deadly, but thankfully, we have a beast in Metagross. With a combination of Iron Head and Bullet Punch, we're able to deal out some big damage before one last discharge from Rotom finishes off the Ace Frostlass. That win felt so satisfying after being slapped around by Candace, and all it took was assembling 6 of the strongest Pokemon ever created, which is a scary thought since this game is only going to get harder. The next little section of Luminescent Platinum is pretty close to the original. We storm the Galactic HQ in Veilstone City, ultimately freeing the Lake Trio Pokemon before making our way through Mount Coronet as we head towards the summit. But it's only once we reach Spear Pillar that things start to get completely unhinged, because it's here that we once again encounter Mars and Jupiter. We appear to be outnumbered, at least until Barry arrives. So we team up and begin an intense 2v2 double battle. Although this is no normal fight, because this is a 12 on 12. That's right, we have to fight our way through 12 Pokemon in just a single battle. This is really difficult because we can't control the actions of Barry and his Pokemon. So we kinda just have to pray that Barry actually wants to contribute here. And thankfully, he does. With 12 Pokemon each, this fight is way too chaotic to describe in any real detail. But we mostly trade Pokemon back and forth. However, I make sure to mostly focus on attacking Jupiter's Pokemon, because once we had cleared through her 6 Pokemon, that leaves only Mars in a 2v1. From here, Barry and I quickly slap the rest of Mars's team into the dirt, giving us the win in what was one of the coolest fights I've ever seen in a Pokemon game. But as cool as that fight was, that's only the entree, because next, we have to deal with Cyrus, a man who has completely lost his mind, and apparently his facial features too. Ah, that's better. Since this game reflects the story of Platinum instead of Diamond and Pearl, we get a cool new cutscene featuring Dialga and Palkia before the gates of hell open up, revealing this awesome shadowy Giratina. After Cyrus is dragged into the portal, we chase him down before being confronted by this scene in the Distortion world. It's here that we confront Cyrus for our final showdown, and this battle is insane. It starts out with a double battle in which Cyrus just whips out Dialga and Palkia, 2 legendaries who are both significantly stronger and a higher level than me. I try to close combat Dialga with our Infernape, but can't finish it off before a Hydro Pump from Palkia absolutely decimates our starter in a single shot. On the next turn, Garchomp is able to get Palkia low with a Dragon Claw, however, then Rotom is also pumped into oblivion by Palkia, and a Roar of Time from Dialga just wipes Garchomp off the map. Scizor also falls on the next turn, but by this point, both of Cyrus's legendaries are low, meaning that Metagross can finish Palkia with Zen Headbutt before Lucario also cleans up Dialga with a super effective Aura Sphere. So that fight was rough, but we somehow managed to scrape by. Except, no, we didn't. Cyrus wasn't done with us yet, because straight away, we have to take on his full-powered team of 6 without getting to heal between fights. Obviously, with only 2 Pokemon left, we don't stand a chance in this fight as Cyrus proceeds to utterly destroy the rest of our team, handing us the most dominant loss of the entire game so far. That was brutal. This is effectively an 8v6 against some of the strongest Pokemon in the entire game. I went on to try this fight again and again, but the result was always the exact same. Dialga and Palkia would just do so much damage to my team, meaning that I was always at such a disadvantage every time I tried to face Cyrus's main team of 6. So, as my losses piled up, I quickly realized that I needed a far better way of dealing with Dialga and Palkia. First, I tried using Gastrodon to nullify Palkia's Hydro Pump with our Water Absorb ability. This strategy was definitely an improvement, but still not enough. I also then tried other strategies using Clefable and Breloom, but these were also not good enough as our team just kept on getting slammed into the dirt. However, then I came up with a plan to wipe out these 2 legendaries without losing even a single Pokemon. And it all centers around our Hitmonlee and Shiny Lopunny. With a priority fake out, Lopunny can force Palkia into flinching on this turn. This leaves Hitmonlee free to attack Dialga. With the boost of our Life Orb, Hitmonlee's super effective close combat is just enough to wipe out Dialga in a single shot. Now it's down to a 1v2, And since both of our Pokemon are so fast, we outspeed Palkia, and the combination of Return followed by another close combat is all we need to finish Palkia. Once again, we've cleared the initial double battle, but this time, all of our Pokemon are still healthy. This means that our fight against Cyrus is an even 6-on-6. While his lead Absol does instantly knock out Hitmonlee with a Play Rough, we can quickly even a score with Larpeny, who gets the revenge kill after a Fake Out, followed by Return. Cyrus sends in his Honchkrow next, and expecting it to use a flying move, I switch out into Rotom, who tanks the incoming Drill Peck like a king, before Discharge shoots that bird out of the sky. Now we had pulled ahead, and this is where our momentum really starts to build. After Garchomp hits the field, Earthquakes are able to absolutely rip through Cyrus's Crawdaunt, as well as his Houndoom on the following turn. And after Infernape quickly cleans up Manectric, Cyrus was left with only his Weavile. However, it only takes a single quad-effective Muck Punch to secure the KO. And with that, we had finally beaten one of the craziest fights I have ever witnessed. After Cyrus disappears, we have to square up with the giant, shadowy Giratina and... oh my god, it's level 100? Yeah. Not only did we have to face two legendaries at the same time, but now we also have to take on a level 100 legendary. Unfortunately, we can't just catch it in our Master Ball, meaning we have to somehow beat it. And immediately, Giratina starts ripping through my team, quickly decimating our Hitmonlee. I know we can't beat this thing with raw power, so instead, opt to send in Rotom, who thankfully lands a Will-O-Wisp to burn the Hellish Dragon. This makes all the difference, as now Giratina is on a timer. So, while our team continues to crumble, the burn damage slowly adds up. Eventually, we'd stalled its HP down into the red, clearing Lucario to come in and finish the fight with one last Flash Cannon. Giratina had been sent back to hell before we were teleported to safety in the send-off spring. Team Galactic had now been dealt with, but that chapter of the game was wild. A 12-on-12 battle, a 6v8 fight, including a double battle against legendaries, as well as a showdown with a level 100 Giratina. This game is absolutely insane. But with all of that chaos behind us, I knew that from now on, we would definitely, absolutely never lose again. Thank heavens you're safe. Never has my heart pounded this hard in 60 years. Are you sure it's not a heart attack? Anyway, with Team Galactic taken care of, now we can turn our attention towards earning the final badge, as well as becoming the League champion. So, we began the long journey west into the now accessible Route 222. However, as we approach the end of the route, it's here that we're confronted by Elite Four member Flint. Just like in the original games, Flint asks us to light a fire under Volkner. Although, unlike the base games, then Flint forces us into a fight. This man seriously just pulled the exact same ambush move that Aaron did to us. And despite this man looking like a clown, whose head was possibly assaulted by a cotton candy machine, his team is no joke. At first, things don't seem too bad. His camera does set up the sun and gets the KO onto our Larpeny, but Lucario quickly gets the trade, evening up the fight to a 5v5. However, then Flareon hits the field. And I don't know what it is, but this man's Flareon was cracked out of its mind. Somehow, it outspeeds Lucario, crushing it with a single Flare Blitz. Even Hitmonlee isn't fast enough and is slapped into the dirt. Infernape also suffers the exact same fate on the next turn, before Garchomp takes enormous damage by the time Flareon finally goes down. But by now, our team has just taken too much damage, as the rest of our Pokemon are picked apart. And yet again, we had been handed yet another brutal defeat. From what we've seen in this game, the Elite Four members are insanely tough, and I was terrified of what we could be facing once we make it to the Pokémon League. But that's a problem for later. For now, we've arrived in Sunyshore City, location of the final gym. Volkner still specializes in electric types, however, an interesting change in Luminescent Platinum is that now, this gym fight is a double battle. While this does add an interesting spin on things, regardless, this fight was still relatively straightforward. With access to great ground types like Gastrodon, Torterra, and Rhydon, we're able to counter Volkner's team pretty hard, leading to us securing a comfortable win on our very first attempt. So, with our 8th badge now secured, now we can set our sights on the Pokémon League. This involves heading north of Sunyshore, surfing across the ocean of Route 223, before ascending the waterfall and entering the horrors of Victory Road. Seriously, this section of the game is a gauntlet. There are so many trainers here, with large teams of fully trained Pokemon, making even random trainer battles feel like a gym fight. So, as we work through Victory Road, I want to briefly address the question we started with. Is this a better remake than Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl? Yeah. For the most part, the extra Pokemon available plus the extra side quests add a unique touch of freshness that wasn't really present in the remakes. The quality of life improvements in Luminescent Platinum also just make the whole experience so much more enjoyable. Although, beware that this version of the game is so much harder than the official releases. So, if you're looking for more of a challenge, then Luminescent Platinum will give you a far better experience than Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. On the other hand, if you'd rather a more relaxed, nostalgic Sinnoh experience, then I'd probably just stick with the original Pokémon Platinum. So, that leaves only one more question that we need to answer. Can I somehow beat this game's final boss after being basically slapped around and spat on by this game at every single step of the way? But before we can take on the Pokémon League, there are a few extra hurdles that Luminescent Platinum has to throw at us. As, before we can exit Victory Road, we're forced into exploring this portion of the map on Route 224. This involves teaming up with Marley to make our way through part of the cavern, before gradually clearing our way through Route 224 on the other side. And once we reach the end of the route, it's here that we find Dawn. Immediately, she challenges us to a fight with her full-powered team that has some enormous threats. With Pokemon like Alakazam, Clefable, and Torterra, this fight is pretty brutal, but our team is just able to scrape by, largely thanks to Garchomp and Togekiss. While this battle isn't the hardest fight of the game, I really like how both rivals get a proper final showdown in this version of the game. Dawn's great. She deserves this. With Dawn taken care of, now we're clear to backtrack into Victory Road, where we can finally proceed through to the exit of what felt like an everlasting gauntlet. Once outside, we receive one last visit from the adorable flowery hedgehog, who hands us the Gracidia flower before scurrying off back into the cave. And after beating up our rival Barry for one last time, we had finally arrived at the Pokémon League, the toughest hurdle of this entire game. We've already faced a lot of tough fights, but this is on a whole other level. 5 battles back to back, each one carrying a full deadly team of 6, including several possible team variations. And we have to navigate all of this using just one team of 6. This is no joke. To prepare, I had to assemble the best team possible. This involves making use of TMs, Nature Mints, Ability Capsules, and EV items to ensure that we have the best chance of success against a seemingly impossible hurdle. However, after some preparation, I had assembled our champion hunting squad, consisting of our starter Infernape, Torterra, Rotom, Togekiss, Scizor, and Garchomp. These were our Pokemon that we would have to rely on to somehow conquer the Sinnoh Pokémon League. And I knew for a fact that we would surely never lose again. Let's do this. I'm Aaron of the Elite Four. It's good to meet you. What? You don't even remember me? We battled like 8 times, you disgusting ambushing bug freak. Aaron leads with his Drapion as I go with Torterra. Aaron immediately gets his Drapion out of there using Parting Shot to pivot into Yanmega. However, this is totally fine, as my main goal with Torterra is just to set up Stealth Rock, which will dish out big damage to each bug type that hits the field. Knowing that Yanmega will either want to go for a bug or flying move, I can safely bring in Rotom Heat to tank the incoming attack. Then, after eating another hit, it only takes 1 Volt Switch from our Electric Oven to pick up the opening KO. And with Stealth Rocks now up, our team has a huge advantage. With a few Air Slashes, Togekiss can quickly rip through both Ledian, as well as the Scyther that follows. While Aaron's Vespiquen does finish off our Togekiss, Rotom quickly executes our revenge, as an Overheat cooks up the Queen Bee. And from here, Torterra is able to wrap up the fight as a Seed Bomb crushes the trash bag Wormadam, and an Earthquake buries the Ace Drapion soon after. That gives us our first win of the Elite Four, as well as some very satisfying revenge over Aaron. It's worth pointing out that while we can't change our team, we can change around our movesets, as well as the form of Rotom between these fights. So, after making some of those changes, next, we stepped up to Bertha and her ground types. Although, I have a straight up evil plan for this fight. This time, Garchomp's the one who sets up Stealth Rock, which is very important as it'll basically nullify the sturdy ability on any of Bertha's Pokemon. Garchomp quickly falls to an Ice Punch, however, Infernape quickly fires back as a quite effective Grass Knot instantly deals with Rhyperior. This brings in Bertha's Torterra, and it's here that our plan comes into motion. Because by bringing in Togekiss, we tank a big Stone Edge before activating our trap card, Encore. This forces Bertha to keep using Stone Edge for the next few turns, meaning we can now bring in our own Torterra, who takes very little damage from Stone Edge. This buys us some time to now use Shell Smash, a move that lowers our defenses while also sharply raising both our offense and speed. Two of these bring our Torterra to +4 by the time Encore wears off. But by now, it's too late for Bertha, as now we have an ultra-powered turtle ready to inflict pain. With a barrage of Seed Bombs and Earthquakes, Yoshi the Torterra just goes on a tear, ripping each of Bertha's ground types to pieces, putting this old lady straight into a retirement home. With the ground types buried, next up on the agenda is Flint, a man who utterly decimated me like 5 minutes ago in Sunnyshore's City. However, now I'm much better prepared and have learned from my previous mistakes. This time, we have a much better plan. Leading with Infernape, we instantly set up Stealth Rocks, and this makes things very straightforward, as once Garchomp hits the field, thanks to a speed boost from its Choice Scarf, super effective Earthquakes dish out enormous damage, wiping through the majority of Flint's team single-handedly, as the Fire-type Master just has no answer for our Shark. Take that, Flint. Serves you right for trying to ambush me, you coward. Our team was holding up well, as we'd now dispatched the first 3 members of the Pokémon League without too much trouble. And to be honest, Lucian is a similar story. This fight starts out mixy, as Xatu sets up both the Light Screen and Reflect. Lucian and I both then pivot around a bit with U-Turn, but ultimately, Lucian picks up the first KO on Togekiss thanks to a Stone Edge from Solrock. Next, I bring in Infernape to set up Stealth Rock, as Lucian switches into his Metagross. It tanks a super effective Earthquake like it's nothing, before a Zen Headbutt crushes our Infernape in a single shot. So, we had fallen behind, but this is where we take over, because next, I send in Scizor, and our Bug Steel type has a great matchup against Psychic types. Immediately, a Swords Dance massively boosts our attack, before Meteor Mash hits for big damage. However, we can mitigate the damage thanks to Scizor's leftovers, combined with the move Protect, to buy time for even more recovery. This allows us to land the 2 X-Scissors that we need to finally take down the dreaded Metagross. The weakened Solrock returns next, but a quick boosted Bullet Punch sends it right back to the bench. And thanks to our leftovers recovery, Scizor can just survive a Psycho Boost from the incoming Girafarig before X-Scissor takes it down too. From here, our momentum doesn't slow down. As X-Scissor wipes Slowking off the map, Xatu is finished off by Bullet Punch, and the Ace Gallade suffers the exact same fate the moment it hits the field. That gives us the win over Lucian, meaning that only one more battle remained. One more trainer standing between us and triumph over Luminescent Platinum. So, we stepped forward to take on Cynthia, confronting the champion inside her freshly redesigned Platinum Room. We may have been decimated throughout this game, but I was determined to prove ourselves against this one last hurdle. Cynthia leads with her Lucario, which is perfect as I open with Garchomp. Thanks to our Choice Scarf, we move first as an Earthquake instantly picks up our first KO, giving us the early lead. This brings out Cynthia's Glaceon, and we know that an Ice-type move is coming, so I use this window to switch into Scizor, who eats the incoming Ice Beam pretty well. However, this is where Cynthia makes a crucial error, because the champ starts using Detect on every second turn, and we can take advantage of this by using Swords Dance for free, boosting our attack on the turns that Glaceon tries to detect. Then, on the other turns, we just protect with Scizor to avoid taking any damage. All of this means that Scizor comfortably boosts its attack to +4, and now we had an absolute demigod of a Steel type on our side, because it only takes a single Bullet Punch to slap Glaceon into the trash. The champ then follows up with Togekiss, who also gets Bullet Punched into oblivion, as does Larpeny on the turn after that. Cynthia's Sea Slug does manage to survive an X-Scissor, but after Scizor tanks an Earth Power, one more X-Scissor finishes off Gastrodon too. All of a sudden, the champion was left with only her ace, Garchomp. a bullet punch falls just short of taking it down, meaning that our beast of a Scizor finally goes down at the hands of an earthquake. So we respond by sending in our own Garchomp, creating an epic face-off between Sharks as Cynthia stared down the champion, Cynthia. However, our Garchomp reigns supreme. With the Choice Scarf boosting our speed, one last Outrage is all we need to crush Cynthia's ace, giving us a dominant win over the Sinnoh champion. With that, despite all our struggles and losses during this run, we had finally beaten all of Pokémon Luminescent Platinum. Jump into this video next for more Pokemon content, and let me know what you think of this Sinnoh remake in the comments below. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.